world. We've got Dallas, South Africa, Namibia, Brisbane, Australia, Abu Dhabi, Egypt, Nigeria, all over the place. Welcome, welcome. My name is Danielle Stein-Fairhurst. I'm based in Sydney, Australia. I'm a financial modeling specialist, and I love talking about Excel and financial modeling, and I love running these virtual meetups where I invite special guests relating that have something to say about the world of Excel and financial modeling. And I'm very excited to welcome Peter Bartholomew. He's joining us from the UK today, so morning his time, evening for me. Peter Bartholomew is, by his own admission, not a financial modeler, but his contributions to modern Excel means that his work is of a lot of interest to financial modelers. He's got a lot of he talks to a lot of financial modelers, in particular with the new dynamic arrays and when LET and LAMBDA came out. And he's been doing a lot of work in the development, and it means that his work is very relevant to the financial modeling community. And I'm sure he'll tell us a lot more about that. So I've known Peter for many, many years, and we finally got to meet in person
Mm.
in London earlier this year, and I've been wanting to have him speak to us for quite some time, and I'm really happy that he's agreed to do it. So welcome, Peter. I'm gonna let you take it away.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. That's yeah, that was a good session, wasn't it, in London?
Yeah,
That's
what a
the
fantastic that was.
well, that's I have been campaigning for better arrays to Microsoft. Oh, at least before 1915. That's 1915. No, not 2015. We'll make that. And was overjoyed in 2018 when I actually got
Oh, I bet.
something that was not just what I wanted, but better. So, and what I have found is that it changes everything to the extent that when I'm answering questions on fora, a common follow-up is where do I put the code? The original poster hasn't even recognized the solution as being Excel. Now that leads me to think that possibly something's changed.
Hmm, hmm.
So let's see whether I can ah down page down should work.
Yes.
So what I'm going to do is try and show you why I believe that SLED and LAMBDA don't just enhance traditional methods. They actually offer a completely different approach within the same package. Um, they do share some common features. Both are based on the grid, and they share a common library of functions. Beyond that, not so much. That's pretty much everything beyond that can be different.
Mm.
Um, so I sometimes think that if the traditional spreadsheet were a building set, it would be piling up Jenga blocks. They're stacked to the point where the whole edifice becomes ever more wobbly, sort of
Mm.
built on its own inconsistencies, and eventually the whole lot comes crashing down. That and I have seen some very unstructured workbooks that it's a wonder they ever hold together. And come to that, only about 10% of spreadsheets at the most are actually correct and do hold together. So um, say that the standards might help. Things like FAST
Mhm.
give you enforce a very regular pattern. And if I'm trying to refactor an analysis, starting on something that's quite well defined does help. So, but they're still built on the same shaky foundations. Now we've got the new shiny thing in town of LET and LAMBDA. And there is a temptation to see this as the clever bits, the bits for advanced users, that the the bit that goes as the pinnacle of creation, balanced on top of your existing model.
Mm.
And I believe that is fundamentally flawed and a wrong way of doing it. The LAMBDA is not the crowning glory of an ivory tower. It is something far more basic than that. So it's a more structured setup. In a way, you have far less flexibility than you do with traditional spreadsheets, but it's more solid. And what you can then do is build from the ground up using lets, lambdas, and so on. Um, the rules of construction are simply different, but what you build can solve the same problems and in a better way.
Mm.
So if I compare
Mm.
that's the traditional and modern, um, now I would hold all my variables as let variables. They're somewhere in memory. I don't know where they are. I don't care where they are. I reference them by name. On a traditional spreadsheet, they would be visible in cells and they would be referenced by the location of the cell. Um, I believe I can get more meaning, but with a name. The formula that traditionally there's the illusion that the formula is in the cell. It's not. There's no such thing as the grid. It is just an illusion, an image, graphic image built up. Um,
You are already
but
blowing my mind, Peter. Already. What are we? 8 minutes in, and I'm like, okay,
that's
okay,
just
okay.
it's what happens when you
Everything that
let
I
trouble
thought
in.
was everything I thought was true, you're telling me is no longer the case.
Yeah, yeah, it's just an illusion. And
Mm.
the originators of the spreadsheet knew that they were expert programmers writing for non-programmers and creating an illusion.
Mm.
So it's that's now the formulas are also in the as the alternating let parameters, where you that they clearly define the parameter. And to view them, it's best in the AFE because the name manager is dreadful. But um, the way you handle arrays, that traditionally they are just collections of scalar cells flying in close formation,
Mhm.
that they address to one by using the concept of relative referencing. If I drag a formula down one cell, then the cell, everything I reference goes down by one cell. It's
Mhm.
an absolutely awful way of doing it, but it works for non-programmers. It's
Mm.
um, that now it is the array that is the object. That
Mhm.
it has elements, fine. Its properties are defined in terms of elements, but the array is the object. You address it by name. I name the anchor cell and then put hash to get a dynamic array. And that's actually a range on your sheet. Um, the user intent that's from a traditional spreadsheet, it's just implicit. You know, that if the spreadsheet is put together by a financial modeler and it's offered to other financial modelers, they can they have a shared background experience and can actually see what's going on. But there's no statement of what's being done at any stage. Whereas now with a lambda function, the function, like any function, the built-in functions, they should tell you what the process step is, what you're doing to get the new results, that you're sorting things, you're filtering them, you're doing something. And it's that intent that I would seek. the precedence. What is it that's being processed? You're doing something, but to what? Well, it's you click on a precedence tree in or use control some square bracket. I was never very good at the keyboard shortcuts. But now you have an explicit argument list in parentheses following the array, the function name. So it's all there, what you're doing and what you're doing to it, what you're doing it to is there explicitly. So, oh, it's built on the concept of multi-dimensional arrays. Just embrace it and don't look back, because if you try and build in what you already know into the new, you'll get yourself into a mess. You'll keep on thinking, oh, I could just do like that, and then
It's,
what you do
yeah,
won't be dynamic. It won't work with the rest.
it's very,
So
we know this, but it's very hard to do in practice because we often have these models that have already been built and we're sort of adapting them and
I've lost
it's,
sound.
oh, you can't hear me?
Yeah, you're there
Yeah, yeah.
again.
I
Yeah.
just said that it's quite difficult to do that in practice because you know you inherit these legacy models and they've already got older traditional formulas there, and it's not really practical to replace everything with a dynamic
Oh, it
array.
is.
So
Well, that's I haven't used the cell reference since 2015 when FAST told me I shouldn't use names, and I thought you're not right. For
mm.
that moment, I banned cell references from my workbooks. I wrote a
I remember
VBA map.
you telling me this a long time ago that you never ever use cell references, and I was like, "What? How can you do that?" And of course, it makes sense once you've got the dynamic
Mm,
arrays working.
yeah. Oh, it was really painful with CSE arrays
Mm.
and defined names, but yeah, it's possible. Right, so let's try and give of just a few examples of things that I mean when I say life is different, and the the algorithms that are implement are now, or I implement. Let's not jump to conclusions. Um, use array manipulation as an integral part of how I do things. I'm trying to start with a simple problem of monthly reports for various items. And somebody says, okay, I want quarterly. I don't need that level of granularity monthly. Quarterly will do me fine.
Mhm.
How do you do it? Well, there are a number of ways of doing it, but the one that I want to illustrate uses array shaping. So what I want is the same figures by quarters. So that sums, if I can see it down the corner, but should be the 194 there. And so what I have done, let's see if I can get this to work, is, and I will also open that up, is I first counted that there are 4 quarters that I've got to reproduce. And I've then just rounded it up. So it's the December that was missing. So I've got a round number of quarters. That's just admin. To go to a single column, the target is to wrap it. So I've wrapped the figures across the sheet in threes. So it's January, February, March, April, May, June. And by rearranging the array, the data, I've now got a simple calculation that all I've got to do is sum by row, and I've got the quarter values. So that's them summed by row.
Mhm.
This this quantity by quarter is by row, arranged by quarter, sum. And that's pretty almost the job done, except that I want to wrap it back under the by product. And so that's just another wrap. And then if this is working data, as part of a calculation, it stays as it is. But if it's for user consumption, if it's part of presentation, then I need to pretty it up with possibly a total row and the heading row. And dynamic arrays are very nice at changing the output formats and give you quite a lot of flexibility. Whereas to do this by cell by cell would be quite awkward, really.
Mm, mm.
Um,
So
okay,
like to do that. Yeah.
so that's array shaping. Next, I want to show problems that can be solved by accumulation and stacking. So a tax return, that this Demeds quoted this at one time. Those are the thresholds to some US tax bands for 2022, I think. And those are the associated rates. And what I want to do is, given a taxable income, I want possibly just to produce the amount of tax, but also the possibility of a full breakdown in which you look at each band, how much tax is payable, is chargeable in that band, and what the tax is. So that's the challenge. You can see my formula is tax calc, the thresholds for the US system, the rates, and that I want a full printout. If I delete that, don't know what, yes, only gets, so I better type true again. And go to, so that's the exercise.
Mm.
And what I do is these are the lower thresholds. I want to get the upper bounds, the limits, and so I drop 0 at the bottom, and then everything drops down. But I'm sneaky. I put the income in, stacked into the loop, so the income gets sorted in the correct place. The next step is to look at the bands, which is the upper limit minus the thresholds. Oh, I suppose I ought to be showing you a little bit about what's going on. So let me go back. Those are the upper bounds. That is the 140 is the amount you see up there. And now that is the entire bands, the entire second band, part of the third band because it's limited at the top by the actual taxable income. The next step is to multiply it by the tax rate to get the tax due. And then I have the breakdown in which I stack all of the things together. I calculate the total and I return a pretty little table with the tax due at the bottom and all of the breakdown. I could, if I wanted it, if I've got, if I'm the accountant, and I've got sort of 150 of these things, I could just put the incomes in with the client name and just bash out the tax as single statements so that I've got a summary one. But okay, so that's an example of that.
That's
This
great.
one,
There's a Paul Clark has just popped another example into the chat, which is a big long sort of code, which is a similar kind of approach, but more using formulas, with a lambda formula. Personally, I just go with the close match XLOOKUP, which is a much simpler way of doing it. But yeah, as always, there's multiple
Oh,
ways of
yes.
achieving the same result.
Yeah, yeah, quite. That's pity I can't see the discussion that
Oh, that's okay. I'll
um
send it to you later.
okay, that'd be great. The other one that I didn't know whether to skip or include, it depends on how much financial modeling I wanted to do today or you wanted me to do,
This looks
was
interesting. Mm.
was a FIFO, first
Yeah,
in,
yeah.
first out calculation, which I have a set of inputs, dates which aren't particularly used, but could be useful for working out the time that stock is held and the warehouse costs and so on. The volume in, the price in, and then the customers, the outputs, dates, volumes, and the possible goal is for any given output batch, you work out the input costs. I've also done this for iron ore, so that you, for any given customer batch, you know what the content is. So it's the same calculation. And I accumulate the inputs. So those essentially are serial numbers that act as a flag. Something happens. You ran out of a supply at that point.
Mhm.
I do the same with the outputs, that you fulfilled an order at this point. I stack the two and sort them. So now I've got um, divisions with each one is a tranche. I can work out how many items are in the tranche, where it came from, and where it went to. And that is the basis for their number of possible calculations. So that's the table that I build up. And so that those are the volumes of each tranche. Those are the customers it goes to. That's where it came from. That's how much it cost. And the formula is, this is done as a Craig Hatmaker 5G component. So it, if I want to get something to a deliverable standard, that's Craig's work is amazing. It's what happens when you let an IT professional into a spreadsheet, and it comes out as something looking totally different in concept. Um, so that so I feed some ideas into Craig's 5G components. He exploits them, and occasionally I step up to the mark and up my game and produce something that is transferable, usable, readable, and documents with change control and all the rest of it. Um, yeah, it's quite a different concept from the normal spreadsheet approaches. But the bit I'm going to show is I do all the calculation. Won't take you through that, but it's the same sort of thing. It is the stacking and sorting. And then I've got a range of options, the default table, or I can group by to get it grouped by the customer, and you look at the total cost of the inputs. I can pivot them. Let's go and have a look at this. That's the list that's grouped by customer.
Mhm.
And if you look, that say customer 3 is 28 and 58. Do I see that? Customer 3, 28 and 58. That it looks, yeah, yes,
Hang on, hang on.
80 there.
What are these buttons here? Is this a slicer with a table?
Uh, it's, yes, it's a one cell. pivots table.
Right.
It's
Nice.
one cell because I've selecting one
Mm.
item, and I've got rid of, it's only the row headings. I don't have any values,
Uh-huh.
and I don't have any headings or buttons or anything else. It's just one value that sits in a cell, and that controls the um, the switch
Mm.
statement, which
Very
controls
clever.
what you see
Yeah.
here.
Nice.
So, and they're nice looking little controls,
Yeah.
aren't they?
Yeah.
That
I like it.
it's so that's the sort of the basic. But if you want to see it's
Mm.
sort of arranged so you can actually see which batches came from where and went where, you can do a cross tab. Now, I wouldn't recommend that if you want to, this is 6 and 4 inputs, outputs. If you're talking of 15,000 and you're thinking of a 15,000 by 15,000 array with just a little straggle of numbers working down diagonal, I don't think that's much use for anyone. That I wouldn't be greatly attracted to that. But for small models and seeing what's going on, it's it's nice, and it's sort of, you can actually see.
Mm.
um, I've also a version which tells you the volumes as well as the costs. So right, that was the sort of end of first part. How am I doing on time? I've got a little bit,
Good, good.
but are there any questions or comments?
No, we
Any rotten
could.
fruit being thrown in?
Yeah, yeah. No, no, that's great. No, just lots of comments, but no particular questions. So if people have got particular questions that they'd like Peter to address, just pop it into the Q&A. If it's just a comment, just pop it into the chat. So I will let you know if questions come through, Peter.
Okay, now I go and see whether I can find another. Isn't that I've got to find another spreadsheet?
You're going to go to the other file now.
Yeah, right.
Pop that into the chat as well, so people can follow along.
Okay then. Um, I've also, it was actually Carolina Lago that produced a very simple financial model for me that I could work with. And because I know it's bread and butter for everybody else, but I find them massively complicated to understand. And really, it's because I was expecting to see a calculation, and what I'm actually looking at in the model is not a calculation; it's a presentation, of information. It's a story in numbers, and whereas I expected, well, what's the question? What is the answer? And what is the quickest route from the question to the answer? That's and probably the question is, given these flows, these assumptions, what is the financial state of my company in 8 years' time? So you want to know whether you're year by year, whether you're in credit or debt. And once as you know that, you have the information to present it how you like. And this is how financial models appear to like it. So, but it really did confuse the hell out of me. So we started off with assumptions, and Carolina put an exponential geometric series for the revenue and costs, which peaked, and that throws the company into debt for a while, into revolver debts, called down. The thing is, I don't know what these numbers mean. Are they just assumed flows, assumed constant over the period, and then magically on January the 1st they change to a different thing? Or is there an implied continuous flow? And it's, and according to how you model it, you then you'll implement slightly different solution algorithms, and you'll get slightly different results and different accuracy. So anyway, the model, I try to analyze it. The green were taken from, I took each of these schedules and statements as if it were a function. I looked at what the inputs were in green. I looked at what the outputs were in yellow, and I went down and found, oh dear, I haven't got a clue what the interest is, and neither will I know until I finish the model.
Mm.
So I put a break in there.
So this
So I
this
either
is
do the
that
revolver
whole
interest.
circularity issue where you've got your opening, closing, and you can't calculate your interest until you know what your cash flow is, and you can't calculate your cash flow until you know what your interest is. Is that what we're attacking
Yep,
here? Mm.
yep. That Carolina had stripped the problem right back and
Mm.
said, right, you solve that. So um, it turns out that the problem is actually comes down to here of beginning, sorry, further down is, yeah, yes, into the debt schedule and things that you don't know down here. I analyzed it. Oh, because I'm going to put everything in let statements, I need names.
Mm.
I use defined names here, but ultimately they move across as let variable names as well. So it's the first cell of is the long-term liabilities, which apparently were nil, which was very good. But and then put a hash after it, and you get the whole row. So that was the way that I started the refactoring. To see what was going on, I wrote out all of the formulae there, and I put the names across the top, and I looked to see whether the names occurred in the formulae. And if they did, then I put a 1 out, and this is the grid that you get. And you see that earnings before tax depends on revenue and costs, and you know those, and that's fine. But it also depends on revolver interest, and you don't know that because that gets calculated much later. So that was what I used to try and get a grip on the problem and try and find what I was facing. And there's a little revolver in there that looks self-contained. So if we go back to the model and I switch out the break, from what I've told you, you should be expecting the whole lot to crash and fail to evaluate, but it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is I've cheated. That if you come down to beginning balance, closing balance, wait a moment, where am I? I think I'm in the right place.
Mm.
The opening cash or debt is not calculated in this model at all. It's calculated on the next sheet. So this one won't go circular because I've given it the answer from a completely separate calculation. What I did with Carolina's model was I combined the cash and the revolver debt into one variable so that positive values are cash, negative are the revolver debt. And I did that just to make the calculations easier. So it's as if it were one account with a credit facility on it. So my calculation is actually here. It's a scan over the revenue minus costs and a lambda function, which works out the cash and revolver. The function looks really, it's not much to it. But then I asked for a problem
If you
without
say
much
so.
to it.
For you, maybe.
I need to know opening values, which are zeros, flows, which are revenue minus costs. The interest is the revolver rates times the negative part of the combined cash debt figure, the financial state. Earnings before tax, you take the flow and you subtract the interest, and that gives you the earnings before tax. The tax is the positive parts, is related to the positive parts of the earnings before tax times the tax rate. And then the closing balance is opening plus the earnings minus the tax and return the closing. And that is the spreadsheet expressed in a different way, in which it sort of just goes straight for the closing balance. The advantage here, the horror, was that the whole damned model has to go into one formula. And how on
Ooh,
earth one does
yikes.
that is it's not quite as bad. It's bad, but it's not quite as bad as that, because this function only has to deal with one time period at a time, and scan will run it across. The other thing about it that's a saving grace is I'm only looking for the closing balance. I'm just looking for one quantity. Everything else that I calculate along the way, I discard. So there is some simplicity in this, but if what I do once as I've got, then opening balance is the closing balances, which is the formula you've just seen, brought forward one period by pushing the initial revolver balance in at the front. And so if I know closing balances, I know opening balances. If I know all the opening balances, then I can go back to this model and calculate the whole lot in terms of the opening balances, which is what is done here and why I've got numbers, because down there I've brought in the negative part of the revolver, which is the debt. And once as I've got that, that goes up to the top as the as as interest by multiplying by the rates that you're paying. So the whole model then holds together, given that I've got the calculation on another sheet. I ought to be finished. I'll give myself kind of 5 minutes just to just throw another couple of grenades into the goldfish ponds.
Absolutely, absolutely. Throw away, grenade away.
um, so I then went to make the calculation a bit more complicated. As you know, if something is complicated already, there's no harm in making it really complicated. So the problems of circularity is that occur when you see models in which you have an average of
Mm.
beginning and closing balances, but you don't know the closing balance until the closing balance depends on the average and the average on the closing balance, and you get yourself into a real mess. You invoke circularity, it
Mhm.
converges to something. It converges to something more accurate, maybe, if it converges. I've seen problems which go on for 100 steps and then just meander away from the solution because the convergence isn't being run at that step. Um, the the chaos theory is based on formulas like this, so you don't necessarily get decent behavior. But there is an alternative, which is predictor corrector approaches. So the interest was the revolver rate times the negative part of the cash date. But that is only a first guess. The earnings before tax, flow minus interest, is again first guess, no more than that. I'm not going to put it on my sheet. I'm not going to overwrite it. That it is just a first guess. It's a different quantity.
Okay.
The average is the opening balance plus half the earnings. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, again, it's just an estimate, but it improves the calculation. So I recalculate interest as with the revolver rate, the negative part this time of the average balance over the period, and then hence the earnings before tax gets recalculated. That I haven't included the tax in this averaging process. I rightly or wrongly assume that the tax is payable at the end, and the fact that you're building up a tax commitment doesn't make your financial state worse. You're not drawing on more revolver debt
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of the year you'll have to pay tax. So I didn't want to merge the tax back in. So I just left that till later. That gives the closing balance. And again, that return the closing balance gives, that's the calculation, but with just a different lambda function, the same as the one before. I've got the estimates as well as the refined thing. If I just output the variables from there, and then I tidied it up. And I was sort of kind, and I separated out what is cash, what is revolver debt. You see them switch as you go into debt in those periods. Um, Similarly with the closing. So, and I chucked away the estimates.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a solution. And you can see the figures sort of going from closing back to opening.
Can I just
And
ask about how this differs to the one that Craig Hatmaker showed us a little while ago? I think it does a similar thing, but I think he said the way that it calculates is slightly different. Is that right?
yeah, but I need to go back and have a further look at what Craig has done. That, in fact, I'm work with Craig,
Mm.
that know him well.
Yeah,
That
it's
that
a similar kind of thing.
yeah, some of my methods of feed into his components,
Mm.
and more a case that I ought to learn and do more with my work to put it in the form of his components.
It's great
But
to see the
my
collaboration.
understanding,
Yeah, the
yeah, yeah,
collaboration is good for the industry as a whole.
my understanding is what Craig did with the circularity problem was to emulate what's the built-in circularity does, of
Hmm.
just repeating the calculation,
Hmm.
and he put that into a recursion rather than um, an Excel iteration,
Yeah.
and did so many loops around. Um, by keeping on averaging the beginning flow and the ending flow over a period and taking the average, that that is a relationship which works exactly if the flows are quadratic. Typically, this type of equation has exponentials as its solution, not quadratics. So you're putting a lot of effort into converging to something that isn't the solution.
Hmm.
It's a good estimate. It's an improved estimate,
Hmm.
but it isn't the solution. So I think Dermot Earley, about 2 years ago, I've only just come across it, but did quote a workbook that does the same calculation as I've done essentially, but you just see the estimate and then the second revised estimate
Mm,
appearing on the spreadsheet, so it's worksheet formulae
mhm.
rather than inlet lambda. So,
Wow.
right.
Yeah.
I
Can I just, if anyone else has got any, I don't think we have any outstanding questions right now. So if anyone has any, please get them in. I just wanted to ask about that symbol, which I'm not really, I haven't seen used that often. You've got that, I can see it just there in front of the nil. It's like the double S. I think it's called a Silk Row. Is that like a placeholder, or why do you
when,
use that symbol?
where are you? Which
Just
where we?
in, so I can see it over on, oh, I can't see your rows. It's like the double S, like the sort of Latin character. Uh,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
that's it.
I think it's called the Silk Row. Is
There,
that
that
right?
one.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, yeah.
That's basically VBA is not tolerant of it, but spreadsheet formulas you can insert symbols,
Hmm.
and although they tell you that names must just be Latin
Mm,
letters and numbers, then it's not really true that if you were a Greek, then all of these things are part of your natural language. So you can pick quite a lot out of the symbols.
mm,
And what I did was to pick somewhere the section markers, the double S,
hmm,
to indicate series assumptions. There, that's it.
mm,
A series assumptions, and I picked, oh, dogs are going berserk, um, a currency marker as constant assumptions, just so that I would know
mm.
what's the, you know, understand
Yeah,
that
so
the
it's like
names,
a,
I know immediately that's a series assumption.
yeah, so it's like a
Um,
marker. Is that a commonly used technique?
it just suited me. That
Mm,
the other things that I've got are backspace lambda,
yep.
and that turns into a Greek
Oh,
lambda.
okay. Yep.
That's just the uh, oh, they call it in words. There's the correction sort of spell. It does spell checking and correction. You can put in symbols like that, and because um, Excel annoyingly thinks that that is a cell reference, or possibly let's do something a little bit more significant. Tax
Mm,
2025 this year. Excel will think that's a cell reference, and everybody knows it's an amount of tax you're going to be paying next year.
mm,
And find bits like that frustrating. I want X1 as a variable. So what I tend to do is X underscore one,
hmm.
and that turns it into a subscript.
Oh, nice.
So so as I managed to get over the fact that Excel has squandered how many variable names? It's the it's hundreds of thousands. Oh, I suppose this number of cells, isn't it? It's 16,000 rows times a million, columns and rows. So it's an awful lot of names that it has squandered on meaningless, on
Yeah.
imaginary cells.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
But
Now, we've got a question from John. He says, "Is
you've gone
this
again. You've
yes?
frozen.
Oh, can you hear me? So we've got a question from John, and he's saying, "Can everyone else hear me? Hear me?
I can
There's
hear you again.
You can hear me all right. So he says, is it practical? So this concept of creating this, the circularity, is it practicable when a model has multiple circularities, for example, tax, interest, debt, sculpting? It seems that the complexity of such a big LAMBDA formula would be exponential with circularities. And secondly, how flexible are these? So how easy it to add new elements into the big formula, such as adding tax circularity to an existing formula? So you would be
Um,
able to add more circularities, wouldn't you?
it's yeah, where you add them might might vary slightly, but something like what they call it, senior debt.
Mm-hmm.
That's got its own little circularity as you integrate along, and it's self-contained, and it just comes in as the result comes in as a number.
Mm-hmm.
That would be quite easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the you're working with formulas like I've lost my mouse. There it is. It's on the wrong screen. Um, like this. I had actually made a mistake and had to confess to Danielle this morning that the average I put in as the opening plus earnings over two. And of course, I'd missed out another opening. It's the opening over two plus the closing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the opening plus the average earnings before tax. And it's reasonably straightforward to edit these formulae. If it's meaningful, you can follow through. I believe they should be a lot more modular, so that you know, each sort of business decision or law ought to be captured in its own Lambda function. So this itself ought to be built up from Lambda functions. Um, and you'd be trying to construct the thing so that it is uh, editable, so that you can take one of these to your client and say, is that your company procedure? This is what I've implemented. I think it's what you described to me. Take that little Lambda function away, test it, see whether it is what you want, or I'll do it with you.
Mm.
Um, so there is a level of comprehension and communication that's going on, which is not involved in the numbers. It's involved in the formulae, and the numbers just follow the logic.
Mm.
So, but you've got to have a client that understands the logic. So
Mm.
it's
Yeah,
so
and I think that the challenge with this is always having the client understand and be able to follow your logic, because we are
mm,
so used to using Excel and the grid, and being able to trace back every single cell. And this is just such a different way of working. I think it's just going to take a while for people to get used to it for sure.
yeah, yeah, agreed.
Okay,
That's
well, we are just about to time. So was there anything else you wanted to sort of leave us with, Peter?
um that is a very good question. I did have a PowerPoint, but let's have what happens when the OP doesn't recognize the code? Another issue. How do you teach it? Do you leave let and lambda to the end? And I say no, they're foundational elements. They're the first things you do. You don't even need to teach A1 notation. This is where you start.
Mm,
Um, should modern Excel be regarded as cutting edge enhancements, or is it better to think of a spreadsheet, or is it its replacement within the same code? It's as different as if you'd Python,
mm,
but it doesn't have Python's libraries. But oh, shouldn't put that up, should I? It's different enough. I didn't say good riddance on this. That's so right. On that, if anyone does have queries or
Yes.
follow-ups, then I am accessible, and I hope to be working further with, say, Andrew Craig and so on. That's
Yes.
some work. And no, what I would like to see is to get some core steering data into a model, and then it shouldn't be necessary to test whether your balance is balance,
Mm,
because that's mere output, and the functions that create the flows should automatically put in the both entries, the double entry. It shouldn't be up to the user. They shouldn't be able to make a mistake of that sort.
mm.
But
That is,
that is hazy futures. It's
yeah,
not my territory, and
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we've
So
got a bit of a got a bit to go before that's going to be the reality. But wow, you have
yeah, yeah.
certainly given us a lot to think about. So thank you so much, Peter. That was absolutely mind blowing, which I knew it would be. So any conversation with you is always an absolute. Is I know it's always going to be absolutely fascinating and challenging and really make you think. So, thank you so much, Peter. I will get the files and the recording out to everyone who registered, as well as the links that Peter mentioned. So, thank you so much, everyone, for your contributions, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Right.